If you got your Bibles, let's go ahead and turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. If you have been with us the last few weeks, you know that we are wrapping up a three-part series that we are simply calling The Greatest of These. It's based on, and the whole series is kind of anchored on this one verse. This one verse, it's 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 13. And it says this, it says, "So now faith, hope, and love abide. These three." In other words, that there are these defining traits that characterize the life of a Christian here on earth, that these are the things that define who we are. But he goes on, he says, but the greatest of these is love. And so for the last 2 weeks, we've already covered faith and hope, right? We talked about faith and hope the last 2 weeks, and we actually didn't spend a lot of time in 1 Corinthians. We actually spent most of our time in the book of Hebrews. But today we're actually going to get to finally the greatest of these. We're going to get to love. And we're going to spend most of our time this morning in chapter 13, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, if you're a Bible nerd or you spent some time in church, you know that chapter 13 is often referred to as the love chapter, right? If you've ever attended a wedding, my guess is you've heard at least a portion of this chapter read at the weddings. I would say probably over half of the weddings that I do, we end up incorporating this chapter in some way into that. It's just packed full. Paul's packing full this idea of what love is. But the question that I've always asked, I know early on when I would read this verse, the question that always came to my mind is, why is love the greatest? Those three things, faith, hope, and love, are really awesome. Why is love the greatest? Why not faith? Faith is pretty important, right? The Bible tells us that you cannot please God without faith. We know that our salvation is received by grace through faith in Jesus Christ alone. So faith is kind of a big deal, right? In fact, faith, I would say, is the currency by which we know God. So faith is a really big deal. So why not faith? Well, here's why. I would say this, that of these three, faith, hope, and love is the only one that will continue on into heaven. Because love is eternal. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you guys were here on week 1, we talked about faith. And the way we defined faith was in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. We said that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, but it's the conviction of things what? Not seen. That faith is actually not seen. Faith is actually, it's the trusting belief in an unseen God, in an invisible God. And you understand that when we get to heaven, nobody's going to come up to you and say, hey, do you have faith in Jesus Christ? Because you're going to be like, well, he's sitting right there. I see him. Literally, I see him. He's right there. In heaven, the unseen God becomes the seen God. And so because of that, faith becomes sight. And therefore, faith is no longer required when you're in heaven. You don't need faith anymore once you're in heaven and you're with God. And then hope. If you remember last week, the thing we talked about with hope, we said that hope is built around this idea of eternity with Jesus. That we are invited into the presence of Jesus. That we are invited into his presence for all of eternity. Romans 8:24 says it like this. It says, but once hope is seen, it stops being hope. That's kind of the remix version, but essentially that's the point it makes. See, the reality is once you see him, you no longer need hope. That in heaven, hope is realized. It's actualized in heaven. That we will actually be experiencing eternity with the Father in heaven once we arrive there. That you don't need hope anymore. But see, the Bible says that God is love. And God, not only is he love, but he is eternal. So that by nature makes love eternal. Love is the only one that will be with us in heaven. We will continue to experience love in heaven. This is why I would argue that love is the greatest of these three things. And see, the thing that separates love from faith and hope is eternity, because love is eternal. Now, let's be honest. In the culture that we live in today, it's kind of hijacked this word love. It's like a lot of words. It gets hijacked and then they twist the definition. They kind of, get it backwards sometimes and mess it up. And we become very confused by what love actually means. See, the same word that I use to describe how I feel about my wife, and the same word that I use to describe how I feel about my children, and the same word that I use to describe how I feel about God, is the same word I use to describe how I feel about tacos. It just becomes, watered down. It loses its punch. It doesn't have as much of a meaning as it used to have. It becomes meaningless in some ways. And our culture sends us all these mixed messages. And it's done this for years. It shapes us to embrace these different definitions of love. And it sends us these mixed messages about what love actually is. If you guys remember in the 60s, the Beatles, they sang, "All you need is love." But then they broke up, and so clearly they don't know what they're talking about. But then Tina Turner would she would say, "What's love got to do with it?" Right? And no offense to the late great Tina Turner, but love's got a lot to do with it. See, I was a product of the 80s and 90s. That's my generation, right? And there was a band that came out of England called Hathaway. And they sang this song, said, "What is love? Baby, don't hurt me." And I don't even know what that last part even means, but that is the question that we have to ask this morning. We have to ask ourselves, what actually is love? See, I think if there's any band that actually becomes close to being theologically accurate, it's the band Boston. See, they sang a song, "More Than a Feeling." And I don't even know if he's talking about love, but I think he's right on. He's on to something. See, the Bible makes it clear that love is more than a feeling. Love is more than just emotions. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some emotions and some feelings associated with this thing that we call love. But it's so much more than that. Love is not something that you simply fall into or fall out of. That it's not an accident. That's not what love actually is. See, according to the Bible, love is actually an action. If you guys have ever heard of Bob Goff, he wrote a book years ago called Love Does. And his whole argument in the book, and I think he's spot on, is that love is actually a verb. It's what you do. So the question we have to wrestle with this morning is, what is love? We're gonna look at what Paul tells us about what is love. But as a baseline, here's a definition that I actually stole from another pastor. I think it's a great definition, so we're just going to use it as the baseline for our entire message today. But he says it like this. He says, "Love is your joy in the Lord expressed toward others at great expense to yourself." Think about that. Love is your joy in the Lord expressed toward other people at great expense to yourself. And some of you are like, "Well, where do you even get that definition from, Michael?" Well, we get it from Jesus. We get it from Jesus on the cross, because Jesus' joy in God the Father was expressed towards us at great expense to himself when he went to the cross. That's exactly what love is. See, it's so easy for us to think of love as a feeling, or we think of love as an emotion, or we have like this abstract where love's just this cloud that just kind of hovers around us everywhere we go. But I love what Paul does in this passage. Paul's going to take this idea of love, and here's what he's going to do. He's going to give us a very practical look at what love actually is. And he's going to give us some handles this morning that we can grab a hold of in this passage. So let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. We're going to be started in verse 1. Verse 1, Paul's going to come out of the gate swinging on this one, right? He's got a couple of haymakers for us. And he says this in verse 1. He says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal." Here's what he's saying. If I come up here and I stand up here and I preach the absolute best sermon you have ever heard in your entire life, really? Nothing? I don't get anything for that? Like, really? Like, no amen? Really? Okay. Kirk, you're usually good for an amen, man. That's surprising. Like, I don't want your pity amen. Just hold on to it. So you hurt my feelings. So we're going to keep going. But essentially he's saying in this passage, it's like, look, if I get up here and I preach my heart out, and Spencer and the worship team gets up here and they move you to tears with the music that they sing. But if we stand up here and we do all that without love, what Paul says is we're a noisy gong. We're a clanging cymbal. See, in Corinth had this really massive pagan population. It was known. They had all these pagan temples and worship all around. And in pagan worship at that time, the gong and the cymbal were the primary means of doing worship in their little pagan temples, right? And so essentially what Paul's saying here is like, look, if your worship experience doesn't have love in it, then you have nothing. He says basically you're worshiping a false god. You might as well just be worshiping a false god because you have nothing. That's what Paul says. And then verse 2, he says, and if I have prophetic powers and understand all the mysteries and all of the knowledge, like who wouldn't want that? I mean, all the knowledge in the world, past, present, and future, who wouldn't want that? Dude, I would be signing up for Jeopardy. I would dominate Jeopardy if that was me. Like every escape room that I ever go to, man, I would be in and out in like 3 minutes. I would just dominate. Trivia Pursuit, oh yeah, you want to be on my team for that. But that's just what he's talking about here. And he goes on, he says, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains. And what he's talking about in this passage, he's talking about miracles. He's saying that if your faith is so big, like you got such a massive faith that you could actually move mountains, that would be a miracle, that you could do that. But then he goes on, he says, if you have those things, but you do not have love, he says, I am nothing, that I'm worthless. I'm actually worse than worthless. I'm nothing. I'm a big old ball of nothingness. That's what he's telling us this morning. Then he says in verse 3, he goes on, he says, if I give away all I have, and I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. And what he's talking about here is generosity and sacrifice. Like you can be the most generous person in the entire world. Like if you were to come up to me after the church and say, Michael, look, I want to see CC Camden. I want to see you guys rock it out. And you just tell me a dollar amount. What's the amount that you need to do all the ministry work, all the mission work, all of the outreach that you want to do within this church? What do you guys need as a church? And I give him a dollar amount. And he whips out his checkbook and he's like, okay, easy. Boom, write you a check. Here's your check. Congratulations. But if he does that without love, the text says that he has nothing, that he is nothing. Now, don't get me wrong. If he does that, we're going to keep the check because that, you know what I'm saying? That's between him and God. I mean, we're going to gain everything. He's going to gain nothing in that moment. But that's what Paul's talking about. Paul's saying that without love, you have nothing. See, if you look back into chapter 12, just one chapter back, you see that the church in Corinth, Paul's talking to them about worship and about spiritual gifts. See, this was a very gifted church. They had all these spiritual gifts that they had experienced in their time. The problem with the church in Corinth was they just weren't a loving church. They didn't have love. And notice the language that Paul uses here. He says, when you don't have love, you have nothing. You are nothing. You gain nothing. In other words, if you don't have love, without love, you have failed at this thing called life. That you are an abject failure at life if you don't have love. Now, the thing about the Bible is oftentimes the Bible can serve as both a roadmap for where you need to go, but it can also serve as a mirror for you, right? And so today, when we look at this, we're going to look at it as a mirror. It's going to give us a reflection of who we are. How many of you guys remember in kindergarten getting report cards? Okay, a few of you. I remember those. Report cards weren't quite like they are in high school. You don't get an A, B, C, D, or whatever like that. You get 2 grades. You get an S or a U. You know what I'm saying? I got a satisfactory or an unsatisfactory. You are a pass or you fail. Like when I got the little thing that said, plays well with others, U for me. But what I want you to do this morning is I want you to grade yourself. As we're going to walk through these next few verses, Paul's going to give us a description of how we can apply these things called love to our lives. And so I want you to use these as a way to grade yourself on how your life looks, okay? So verse 4, he says this, love is patient and kind. Well, I'm 0 for 2 right out the gate. I don't know about you. But like you guys are super generous with your compliments to me all the time. But 2 words that have never described to me is patient and kind. Like if you're in town and you tell people about your church, oh, tell me about your pastor. I promise you the first two words out of your mouth are not patient and kind. It's just, you know what I'm saying? It's not my nature of who I am. See, patience is the passive reaction of love towards other people. It's how you react. In fact, the Greek translates literally into take a punch or to absorb something. That's what patience is. And let's be honest, we're not a patient people by nature. It's not typically who we are. I mean, that's why we have Amazon Prime, right? I mean, because why would we want to have to wait 5 days to get it from Amazon when I can get Amazon Prime and I can get it in a day and a half or 2 days? We're just not patient people. And look, I'm the worst. I am. I'm the worst when it comes to patience. Like when I go to the grocery store, I always go to the self-checkout line because I feel like the self-checkouts are going to be faster. But inevitably, I always get behind that one person who has never used self-checkout. And it's like they need a tutorial. And they're going through there like trying to figure it out. And like they got 12 cans of the exact same thing. And so they scan a can and they look at it and they put it in the bag. And they get another can, they scan it. I'm like, you can scan just one can 12 times, you're fine. Or you could just scan it and punch 12 in, you're fine. Just speed it up a little bit. Like I'm the worst at this. And I recognize that. So what I try to do is I try to actually be patient. But then I find myself getting very impatient with myself when the patience doesn't come fast enough. That's how messed up I am when it comes to this idea of patience. So if patience is the passive reaction of love to other people, kindness is the active action towards those same people. And let's be honest. Our culture is not doing so well when it comes to being kind towards other people. We're losing that ability. Like take social media. Man, people will say the worst things to each other on social media. They'll say the most hurtful things, and then they'll hide behind a screen. It's like, what makes you think you could say that to someone? What makes you think it's okay? You would never say that to their face, probably because they would punch you, but like you know what I'm saying? Like why? Why do you feel like it's okay because you're on social media that you get to say that? So clearly I got some work to do in the kindness department too, all right? But here's the question. Are you patient? Are you kind? Do you have a tendency to listen before you react in a conversation? Or are you listening in order to react? Like you're building your arguments up in your head and you're just waiting for that break so you can just jump right in. Are your words more criticism or are they encouragement? And if you don't know, here's a great way to check. Open up your phone, go to your text. Go to how you text with all of your friends and family and read your words back. You'll get an idea of how you fall on this kindness scale. See, Paul's point here is this, that love is an action. It's not merely a feeling. It's not merely an emotion. It's actually something that we have to do. We have to be patient. We have to be kind. So let's keep going. He goes on, he says, love does not envy or boast. Okay, I'm 0 for 4. This is not a good look for me out the gate. I'm just telling you. Envy, another word for envy is jealousy. And jealousy is basically when we covet the blessings of other people for ourselves. When we look at how God has blessed other people and we can't even be happy for that person because we just want for ourselves what they have in their moment. And look, I don't typically think of myself as a jealous person. I don't. But man, you roll up in a brand new truck, you know, I'm talking about maxed out, diesel. Dude, you want to talk about some truck envy? Absolutely. I'm looking at you like, dude, you probably won't even get a speck of dirt on that truck. You're never going to even haul anything in the back of the truck. Man, I could use that truck. Do you know what I could do for God's kingdom driving that truck around? I could do some amazing things. Or then I get like boat envy. Like you send me a picture of this brand new boat that you got, and I'm like, yay, good for you. Like you're probably going to run into a sandbar on your first time out. You don't know how to drive a boat like that. That boat's too big for you. You definitely don't know how to fish that boat. You give me that boat, I'll show you how to fish. I can put some fish in that boat for you, trust me. I get so jealous of what other people have that I can't even be happy for them. The question is, do you struggle with that? Do you struggle to celebrate the blessings that other people have? And then he says boasting. See, boasting is nothing more than pride dressed up as camouflage. That's all it is. Boasting, and what boasting will do is you will overshadow God's blessings in other people's lives. Like you get all excited and you come to me and you show me this picture of this 3-pound bass that you caught over the weekend. And I'm like, great. Let me show you some pictures, man. Let me show you this 100-pound tarpon that I caught one day. Let me show you this 120-pound sailfish that I hooked into. I just overshadow the excitement and the blessing that those people have. And then we have this humble brag thing that happens sometimes. It's really boasting, but we try to act like it's not because we know boasting's bad. So what we do is like, man, I need your help. You just don't understand, man. I have shot so many deer this year. I've got so much deer meat, I don't even have a place to put it. I'm going to have to buy another freezer, I guess. Could you take some deer meat off my hands? It's just a humble brag. That's what you're doing. Do you always find yourselves having to overshadow the blessings of other people? Like your friends, your family, when they come to you and they have pure joy that they want to share with you, do you have to do the one-up game with them? Do you always have to find a way that you've done it bigger, faster, better first? Here's a great way to test whether or not you're a boastful person. How many of your conversations start with the words I, me, or my? Think about it. Does every conversation you have to start that way? So let's keep going. He says, love is not arrogant or rude. And I'm just going to stop judging I'm just going to put my score out because that's just going to make me look worse. So arrogance is basically what makes you think that you're better than other people. That's arrogance. When you think you're better than other people. Rudeness is when you actually treat them that way. And let's be honest, man, Christians are the worst at this. We really are. We will treat people in the name of Christ in very, very rude ways. We do this all the time. Like that one person who has had the same seat since Noah, right? And when they walk in and that new couple shows up and they're sitting in their seat and you can just see them grimace, right? Like they almost want to go up and say something to them, but they know they can't say anything to them, but someone's sitting in their seat. So they just hang out. Or that person that says, oh, I'm just being honest. No, you're not. You're being rude. You're just using rudeness as a permission slip or using honesty as a permission slip to be rude to other people. That's what you're doing. And look, people that do what I do for a living, man, we can be the worst at this too. Like I love when I have conversations with recent seminary student grads. Like they've been through class, they got all this head knowledge, and somehow they think that makes them spiritually mature. And so now what they want to do is they want to use that to kind of talk down to people and be condescending and be rude to people because they think somehow because they're so smart, and oh, by the way, you're probably not that smart, they seem to think that equates to spiritual maturity, but it doesn't. Or that person who has been a Christian for like all their life, like 50 years, they have been a Christian, as if somehow there's a chronological timeline attached to your spiritual maturity. Like, well, I've been a Christian for 50 years. I've done this. I've done that. Like, who cares, man? Are you spiritually mature? You don't get to be rude to other people. The question you got to ask is, are you arrogant and rude? I mean, I am more times than I care to admit. Like when you have conversations with other people, are you the sun and everybody else that comes into your orbit has to revolve around you? Like, are you the main actor in the sitcom of your life and everybody else is like a supporting actor in your life? Here's a personal one. When you walk into church, do you expect to be served by everybody, or are you looking for ways that you can serve other people? One last question here. When you have conversations with people, do they feel honored in that conversation, or do they feel beat down, belittled, and berated? Are you arrogant and rude? Let's move on because I feel like I might have touched a nerve on that one. It does not insist on its own way. Are you like Burger King? Does it have to be your way right away? Does everything have to revolve around what you want? Do you find yourself manipulating people or circumstances to get what you want or the outcome that you want out of a particular thing? See, the reality is envy, boasting, arrogance, rudeness, having things my own way. They're just different versions of the same thing. Selfishness. That's what all this comes down to. It's like, yeah. Enough about you. Let's bring this back to me. That's what all of these things are about. And see, the opposite of love is actually not hate. See, hate is just the absence of love. That's all it is. The actual opposite of love is selfishness. See, love says, hey, it's all about you. And selfishness says, no, man. It's actually all about me. Paul's point here is that love is not selfish. It's not. So let's keep going. He says, love is not irritable or resentful. Irritability is kind of like this low-level frustration that you have in your life. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a pilot light that's always on in the gas stove, and when you add a little bit of gas to it, it just flames up really, really big. Some translations will call irritable, they'll use the word easily angered. And that's another way to think of it. Who remembers the movie Ricky Bobby? Anybody at Talladega Nights? Remember that? There was that scene, for those that don't know, their family has just they're going to celebrate at Applebee's. They're going to have this big dinner at Applebee's. It's going to be an awesome time. And so they roll up in Applebee's, and Reese Bobby, who is the dad, you can tell he's getting agitated. And it's a sweet moment. Everybody's talking about, how much they love each other and care, and he's just getting more and more agitated. And then that sweet little waitress shows up, and she's got his steak, and he's like, darling, I don't mean to be rude, but I asked for no onions on my steak. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I thought you asked. No, I think you meant to put the onions on my steak. And then he just blows up, right? And just goes from 0 to 100 overnight. He gets kicked out of the Applebee's. Are you easily irritable? That's what he's talking about. Are you easily angered? Does the slightest thing set you off? Like things that really shouldn't bother you as much, do you find yourself getting triggered for those things? Does your family feel like every time you come home that they got to walk on eggshells around you? Oh, make sure you don't say that. Don't do this. Make sure you do this. Don't do that. Or you're going to set them off. And let's be honest, though. The majority of time when we find ourselves being irritable or being irritated, it's really because we're not getting our own way. Like there's something we want and we're just not getting our own way, so we're just going to have this low-level frustration. But you've got to keep this in check. You've got to keep your irritation in check, because unchecked irritation turns into resentfulness. You begin to resent all the people around you. That's why these two are paired together. He keeps going. Verse 6, he says this, it does not rejoice at wrongdoing. Another way of saying that, some translations will say, keeps no records of wrongs. Married couples, do you have a marriage scorecard that you keep tucked in your back pocket? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you find yourself like in an argument like, well, back in 2001, you said, duh, 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 duh. Like it doesn't even have anything to do with the conversation, but you draw on that. Do you have a mental filing cabinet in your mind of every single time that someone has wronged you in your life, and you're just stacking it up in the filing cabinet? Do you keep an internal ledger of all the times someone has done something against you so that you can build it up for a future argument that you don't even know you're going to have, but just in case you want it in your back pocket? See, that works great if you're a lawyer, but it sucks if you're talking about relationships. It's not a healthy way to have relationships. It says, keep no records of wrong. Do you know what that really is? It's forgiveness. It's being willing to let go of that thing. It's being willing to release the past. That's what he's talking about. But he goes on, he says, but rejoices with truth. In other words, what he's saying is that love never celebrates sin, because the truth that he's talking about is the truth of Jesus. But rather than celebrating sin, what we do is we're called to rejoice when someone repents. We're called to rejoice when someone walks in truth. See, love doesn't withhold truth. It doesn't. But it speaks truth in grace. Like your words need to be saturated with grace, but we are called to speak truth. And the question you have to ask is, do you find yourself excusing someone else's sin simply because you want to avoid an awkward conversation? Or you don't want it to be really uncomfortable? Do you rejoice more in a person's worldly success or in the successes that they have in their spiritual growth? Let's keep going. Verse 7. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. In other words, what he's saying is love never quits. Oh, but you don't understand, Michael. You don't know what she said. Love never quits. Oh, but you don't have no idea what he actually did. Love never quits. Oh, but you don't understand how difficult things have been for us lately. Okay, look at me. Love never quits. That's what he's saying. He's saying that you never give up on fighting for the hearts of the people that you love. You never give up on fighting for the hearts of your spouse, for your children, for your parents, for your friends, for your church. You just keep going after it over and over. And if you've tried 100 times and it still has failed 100 times, do you know what you do? You try 101. You just keep going. You don't stop. And what I love about Paul in this passage is he takes away every opportunity for an excuse to be unloving. Like, he does not give you the opportunity to be unloving in this whole thing. He just takes that away. But then Paul's going to keep going, okay? So here's what he says in verse 8. He keeps going. He says, love never ends. And the reason love never ends, we said it before, is because God never ends. God is eternal and God is love. Therefore, love never ends. See, the Bible tells us that God is sometimes stirred to wrath, but we walk around sometimes thinking that God is wrath. But it's not right. Like, God somehow is angry. Like, he's ticked off. He's just waiting for us to screw up again so he can just slam us again. But that's not who God is. God is love. It's not just that God is loving. Yeah, he is that. But who he is, just at his core, he is love. He goes on. He says, as for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. And look, here on earth, all of those things are important. All of those things are really, really important. Prophecy, knowledge, spiritual gifts. But you understand, in heaven, there's zero need for any of that. There's zero need for any of those things. And here's why. Because in heaven, we are co-heirs with Jesus. That we have a good Father that loves us and will not hold back from us. When we are in heaven, we will experience God in the fullness in a way that we could never experience him right now. And anything that is good and holy for us, we will have access to. So we don't need things like prophecies and tongues and knowledge. We're just going to be sitting there in the presence, worshiping and loving our Father. That's what it's going to be like. Verse 11, he says, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. Do you realize that when we are rude, when we are irritable, when we are boastful, when we're not patient, when we're unkind, when we got to have things our way, we're essentially acting like a toddler. That's what he's telling you. You're acting like a child in those moments. And I get it, like your precious little Johnny, you think your precious little Johnny is like this sweet little angel, but you understand that Satan was an angel too, right? I'll let that one sit because I'm going to get emails about that one. So, but the point is, children aren't loving by nature. I mean, they have loving aspects, but they're not. Children can be rude. Children can be not patient. They can be unkind. They can do things like that. That's just how the nature of a child. Like, I've never seen a child saying, I'm hungry, I want food, and you're trying to get the meal prepared, but it's going to take an extra 10 minutes, and they're oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was going to take some minutes. Let me just go sit over here and watch some TV while you do it. That's not what they want when they want it. Like, no toddler has ever looked at their mom and said, Mom, I know you've had a bad day. I am so sorry. How about I go over here in my room and I'll just play quietly with my toys and you go take a nap? No toddler has ever said that. They don't do that. And what Paul is saying is like when you and I are unloving, when we act unloving, we're basically being immature. We're acting like a toddler. So you begin to see how deep this idea of love is. You begin to understand how powerful, how selfless love actually is. Remember our definition. Love is your joy in the Lord, expressed towards others at great expense to yourself. So let me ask you this question. How are you doing in the love department today? Like, you got your scorecard. We went through like 9 different verbs. Like, how are you doing? Anybody crushing it? Anybody like, ooh, I'm 9 for 9, man, I am rocking it. Or maybe you're like me, you're like, I didn't do so hot. Like, I clearly got some work to do. I got some things I need to work on. See, it's easy to read this passage and become overwhelmed when you think about love. Because I haven't always been patient and kind. I have found myself being envious and proud. I do get easily irritated and easily angered. I do find myself sometimes keeping records. And see, if chapter 13 is the standard for love, on some level, we have all failed at some point. But that's exactly why we need Jesus. That's exactly why we need a Savior. Because love isn't just something that God asks us to do. Love is who God is by his nature. And think about it like this, okay? If you were to replace the word love with Jesus in this text, every single statement would still be true. Because Jesus is patient. Jesus is kind. Jesus did not envy. Jesus did not boast. He was not arrogant. Jesus was not irritable. Jesus did not keep records of wrong. Jesus bore all things. Jesus believed all things. Jesus hoped all things. And Jesus endured all things in the cross. And if your solution to how you're going to get better at love is to simply just try harder, man, I got some horrible advice for you, man. That's terrible, man. It's not going to work. Like, think about it. Like, have you ever tried to make yourself go to sleep? How does that work? You just lay there. You're like, this is not working. Same thing. You can't just make yourself be more patient. So then what's the solution? How do we improve on this? How do we get better at love? Well, there's two things I'm going to give you this morning really quickly. The first one is this. The first step is this. You got to receive the love of God. First thing you got to do is you got to receive the love of God. Look, you and I are called, we're actually commanded in the Bible. We're not just called, we're commanded to love one another. That we are supposed to give love to one another. But you cannot give what you've never received. You cannot give what you don't have. And 1 John 4:19 says it like this. It says that we love because God first loved us. Because we have received love from God is what gives us the ability to then love others the way God loves us. So you gotta receive it before you can give it. Who remembers the show The Office? Anybody ever seen that? Like, one of the cringiest episodes on that was the Scott's Tots episode. You might remember that one? Like, just thinking about it's cringy. Basically, Michael Scott's like the regional manager, and like 10 years earlier, he had gone to this elementary school, and he had made this promise to all of the elementary school students. They said, it's the inner city kind of kids, and he's like, look, if you guys will stay in school, do your best, at the end, when you graduate from high school and get accepted into college, I'm going to pay your way through college. I'm going to pay your tuition for college. Well, that's awesome, but he didn't have the money to do that, and he never did. So fast forward, 10 years, and they're coming to collect, and it's just this cringy moment because he has promised to give something that he doesn't have. Same thing with love. If you don't have the love of Christ in your heart and you haven't accepted that, you can't turn around and then expect to give it to other people. You got to have it before you can give it. That's what he's saying here. See, Paul's point in chapter 13 isn't simply do better at love. That's not his point. It's to learn to love the way Jesus does. And so you have to receive that love before you can ever give it. But it also means a second thing, that we have to draw closer to him. You have to draw closer to God. So the key isn't just white knuckle your way into trying harder. That's not the point. See, if you want to love others, if you really want to love them, like love them the way God tells us to, then the first step is you've got to grab hold of the love that God is offering you. You've got to embrace that. You've got to accept that love that he has first. And then you draw closer to God. You draw closer to Jesus in all things. So as we wrap up, let me ask you this one question, just one question. Who needs your love this week? Who in your life, whether it's a family member, a friend, a coworker, a neighbor, who needs your love this week? Who do you need to give love to this week? Do not allow 1 Corinthians chapter 13 to stay on the pages of the Bible. You need to live it out in your life. You need to take it and pour it into the lives of others. You need to carry it forward in your relationships with other people. But first you got to receive it because God is love. Let me pray for us this morning.